Good morning.
Good evening, sir. How you doing?
Good. You don't normally get up at this hour, do you?
Yeah, we do actually.
That's
Um,
impressive.
well, we made a decision not to work at night anymore for the most
Okay.
part. And so that the only way we could do that was to do work some other time, and that meant waking up at 4. So that's what we do.
Is that paying off?
Yeah, big time. I like it much more because I get I give myself then time to read at night instead. So that's been a very nice thing.
Mhm.
So because that's the one thing I had been missing for a while is just when I was a coach, I could read more. I guess just I would always set some time out in my day to
Mhm.
make sure I was reading. And as teaching, which is kind of perverse and weird, I don't have that time
Yeah.
to do that. And so setting that up as a ritual or a habit in my life is easier when I don't have to work at night, kind of thing. Because I'm not going to wake up at 4 and read. I don't think.
Yeah.
So it's been good. I've liked it. I am tired though,
Yeah.
but I'd be tired if I woke up at 5. So
Mhm.
and that's what we were doing before anyway. So it's not that big of a deal. How are you doing?
I'm well. Just
Yeah.
just got a bit of a grade crunch and master's crunch. You know how it is.
Ooh, yeah,
I mean, it's not bad. Our lives are
yeah,
pretty good. I'm just right here at one of those phases where I got to turn in reports and do a bit of work and
right.
something else. Yeah, I'm perfectly good.
Good.
Just have to be on top of my P's and Q's at the moment.
Yeah, get that efficiency down.
Yeah.
And how's Seoul when you go? What do you guys do? Just
We've only been a couple times, to be honest with you.
okay, yeah.
We're the most boring people ever.
No,
We didn't used to be that way.
I think Diane and I would argue with you. So.
Because there in Medellin, we used to do more. We
Right, yeah,
were more active. It's
yeah.
kind of surprising. We didn't think we would be that way. It's just kind of, I don't know. We're not totally in love with Korea. I think I very much like my school, and there's a lot of cool things about Korea. The times I've been to Seoul, it is a really cool place, but
Yeah.
it's just hard to explain. Like we went to Thailand, and I was right back in my mode that I was in Colombia, just exploring and not timid or anything. But for some reason here, we just kind of get in our groove, and just we don't go much. Actually, we're going this Friday to hang out with Crystal.
Oh,
Actually,
okay, cool.
so that should be fun. But we've only been a couple times other than that for the entire year. It's kind of lame.
Yeah. Huh. What do you think what's the difference between Thailand and Korea though? If you can you verbalize it or is it?
I don't know. I know that in Thailand, it's I don't know. I can tell you what the difference is. I don't know why it affects me differently, but
Uh,
I'm just more inspired in Thailand. It's like Colombia.
mm,
It's just vibrant and tropical and
mm,
chaotic.
mhm.
Just all the things that get me going. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, makes sense. Makes
Mm.
sense. So and how's classroom life going?
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm learning always more as a teacher, and it's a lot of interesting things. Yeah, just you go to a country and you start to learn more and more about a culture, and the kids are a
Mhm.
reflection of the culture.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's good. I mean, I was telling you in a message, I was really surprised how stressed out the kids are and how unaware of it
Mhm.
we tend to be. And I only realized that because part of the middle school plan is that we have to have clubs. It's like the teachers run a club. It's good though.
Right.
Like in other words, from Tuesday to Thursday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, the first 45 minutes of school are just a club. They don't do anything academic. So it's usually something active.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But it can be anything. It's just whatever the teacher's interested in. So we have like creative movie making and photography and whatever. So, and it changes
Okay, nice.
trimestrally.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a psychology club just because I enjoy teaching that. And it was something that I had a bit of knowledge in that I could do fairly easily. So yeah, I was just doing some stuff with the kids in that club. And I was just so surprised that I was just following a protocol from I'm taking like an emotional intelligence class for the
Okay.
masters.
Mhm.
And I was following a protocol to just kind of introduce the topic to the kids. And I was surprised at how textbook their responses were. It was pretty much exactly what the book said it would be like. I thought that was surprising.
For when it comes to stress or what?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because the book talks about the fact that we as adults are not great models because we don't manage stress well, and that most teachers are not aware of how stressed out their kids are. And because when they went around the circle, I was like, wow, I can't believe that they are, because they say it in a joking manner, but as an adult, with a little bit of emotional intelligence that the experience gives you, you're like, wow, that kid is not well,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I'd be totally interested in doing that. What kind of other protocols are you trying?
I thought this was going to be totally lame. I thought this was going to be totally lame, and I couldn't believe that it worked. This book says that you're supposed to, this protocol that they have is called pass the leather. So without giving you the whole spiel behind what they say passing the leathers, all it is basically is you give a sentence stem and you put the kids in a circle. This group's about 12. And so the first stem that I gave was I wish.
Okay.
So let's say it starts with me. I have to say I wish. And if you're next beside me, you have to respond to what I said. And then you say an I wish. And it just goes in a circle like that.
Is the response paraphrasing or you just have to give some sort of?
Yeah, it's just something. It's not paraphrasing.
Okay.
And man, it was surprising because if you choose the right stem, like an I wish, that can go really positively or negatively, or I suppose it could go neutrally as well. But it was the thing that stood out. This was the first one that I did. The thing that stood out to me about that one was the fact that all the kids, except for one out of the whole 12, ridiculed the kid before them. And it was interesting because once we went around, I don't say anything. It's supposed to be very student driven. And I was like, what do y'all think that I noticed as the adult just watching? And they said, we're all negative. They knew. And I was like, wow, it's interesting that they were aware of that. And then the one that I did last week, I've got it tomorrow. I got to figure out what I'm going to do with them. But if you're interested in doing that, by the way.
Yeah.
And then I just did that, and it was almost, for me, it's almost like an assessment. It's like an emotional assessment. It's interesting. Yeah. And then after that, what did I ask them? I was, because I was supposed to be, for this class, I was supposed to be using it in such a way to introduce them to the idea of emotional intelligence. So I was just trying to figure out how would I work that into the psychology club. So I asked them the open-ended question, what should be taught in school that you think is not? Because the premise of the book is that this should be taught.
Okay.
And so I was just, and they had that conversation. It was interesting, the things that they said. A few of them said that we should be taught how to interact better with each other. But then there were just, it was a range of things after that. But so the last one, I was supposed to do a similar protocol and then ask them about how they manage stress. And so the stem this time was, today will be a good day if.
Okay.
And I was telling Angela about it, and I was like, I thought that someone would say, today will be a good day if it just keeps going as it is, something to that extent. None of them did. And beyond that, something that stood out to me was all of them identified things that they had no control over.
Okay.
So that they would say, today will be a good day if I didn't have to go to practice. Which, I mean, theoretically, a kid could run away, but that's not really an option, is it? I mean, they're going to go to practice. Or today will be a good day if I didn't have the science test. One response was, today will be a good day if the world comes to an end. I mean, deep stuff like that. And I was just like, man, I was just like blown away. I was like, that book is right. Like, I had no idea.
Right.
And so then from there I went into, well, what stresses, what tends to cause, you just give a few things here and there. I just have a very, very rough draft plan, and I try to let them just talk and let them go. So I asked the question, what stresses y'all out? And they gave a few things. And they said, this conversation stresses me out, like even talking about these things is not, doesn't make them feel comfortable. Because they're all jokey and laughy, but there's also like these little things that they put in there that's, I don't know, because, my interpretation could be totally wrong, but it seems sometimes, depending on the kid, slightly desperate as well, like almost like a cry for help a little bit. Like the kid who said that, I wish that the world would end today or whatever, like today would be a good day if the world comes to an end. Almost, I don't know, it seemed like there was something like, hey, ask me how I'm doing. You know what I mean? Something like that. But so the end of it was, though, and this is what I found interesting, and this was another thing that matched the book, and I couldn't
Mhm.
believe it. I was like, well, how do y'all deal with stress? And they just had that conversation with one another, and some of them said, I'll just give you some examples. Like, I just like to scream and cry and beat a beanbag.
Huh.
And I don't know if that's positive or negative. Do you? I mean,
Right.
I don't know. I mean,
mean,
that could be
You know,
better than beating a
at least-
person.
yeah, they have an outlet.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, instead of just
'Cause
keeping
when-
it within yourself and not doing anything about it.
Yeah, exactly. And then only one or two said they exercise, which is another great outlet for stress.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Maybe one of them talked about listening to music and stuff like that. But I was interested that several of them said that they just cry because the book said that crying releases. I didn't know this, that endorphin is short for endogenous morphine.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't know that either.
Yeah. And that there's over 20, and the most powerful one is called beta endorphin, and it's released when you cry.
Huh.
So it's interesting that even unconsciously, they have ways of trying to bring that stress down that they don't really understand what's happening to them. And I imagine most adults don't realize what's happening either.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's the other
Well,
thing.
I would think it would be interesting because, you know, those processes that we developed were under a completely different kind of stress, right?
Like what?
Because
What
like
do you
we
mean?
were, we were stressed out that we were going to get eaten and killed, you know,
Exactly,
like kind of that
yeah.
sort of thing. So I wonder if it does, you know, I wonder how the stresses that we have now, you know, if our brain is equipped to handle them, or if that's why we do need all the other things like the exercise and kind of purposeful things that we do to eliminate stress in our life.
Yeah, totally. That's another premise of the book, and I've had that conversation with people even before the book. Just like so much of what we are is a culmination or an ongoing process, if you will. But it's, you know, we've gotten here because of evolution for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and all these stressors. I don't know if it's literally adrenaline, but it feels like adrenaline, doesn't it? That it's because you're about to run from a tiger or you're about to fight somebody to the death or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those fears were totally rational, but we live in such a world now that we are, if we're not careful, we can be very controlled by irrational fears. Irrational fears in the sense that, you know, if you can't control the fear, it starts to dominate you. And I've been like that in life. You know, if again, if you're unconscious as to what's controlling you, you're kind of a slave to it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially like in grade 8, because, you know, I don't think anyone's conscious that young. You're still developing, and there's just so much social pressure for whatever. It's different in every society. Here it's a grade thing, you know, like as far as like excelling and doing really well. But even in any culture, you know, it's just an uncomfortable phase of life, adolescence. I think it's not it's not the peak of your life, you know.
No, it's not. But it's the uphill, right? Your brain's changing. You're getting there. Well, I was thinking when you were talking about that experience in the classroom, how did you do anything purposely to set up like a culture of trust within the classroom, so that they felt, you know, because even like you were saying, like they were kind of making fun of each other and their answers, and yet they were still sharing what seemed to be like real answers. Do you know what I mean? So do you account for that? Is the society culture in general more trusting or whatnot, or was there something that you did purposely?
No, I think I'm just lucky because a lot of the friends it's literally I said there were 12. I think there's actually 15, and 14 of them are girls. There's one guy, and of the 15, 13, 12 of them, that's why I said 12, sorry. So of the 15, 12 of them are grade 8 students. So they're my students, and they're all friends. So they just happen to be in that. And the 3 grade 6 girls are friends as well. So I just got lucky that they happen to have that dynamic. And they also accounted that. They also said that, you know, that's another reason why we kind of hated on each other a little bit, because we're friends. But so I didn't purposely set that up. It was very, very sloppy on my behalf, to be honest with you, because I'm more or less doing it for this class. But I was just, to be honest with you, when I started the class and I started reading, I was like, oh my God, I got to jump through this hoop. And this really inspired me, because I was like, wow, it gave legitimacy to what I was learning. I didn't think it was, I don't know. I just saw it in real life. It was,
Well, I would say you're probably doing something unconsciously to have a culture of trust, you know, with at least because you have, you know, those kids that know you. Because that's kind of my new kick now is like, you know, everything starts with trust. And And in Medellin, I don't think the culture is very trusting, if I can say that.
Obvious historical reasons, I would imagine, right?
And so you don't start with trust there. And then I've really been reflecting on, how the kids behave in general, not all of them, obviously, and just the struggles that I have in class. And I think what it comes down to is that I'm going to develop like a survey to give the kids, because I do want to find out. And it's like, A, do you trust me as a person? Like, do you have trust for me? And I've been kind of reading up on it. And it's like they have to know that you know what you're talking about. Like in general, for a kid to trust a teacher, like you have to know your content. You have to have character. Like they have to think that you are being who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one was something in there. And I think if I were to ask them, I would hope I'd get a majority. I think most kids would trust me. And I don't think they trust each other. And I don't think they trust each other when it comes to learning. Like, I don't think I think they trust their friends, but I don't think they trust their friends to support them in their journey of learning, if that makes sense.
And why do you say that?
Because they don't see a connection. And I shouldn't say they. I'm thinking of a couple students specifically. One time we were working on something, and this kid was they were supposed to be doing something on a computer, logging into this game that I wanted them to check out for math. And he kept bringing his friends over to listen to something. And I was like, hey, just let's get through this. It's just logging in, checking this game out. That's all kind of the expectation right now. So let's go do that. So then not like 10 seconds later, he's calling somebody else over to check out whatever he was listening to. So I asked him to come outside so we could have a chat. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? What's up? He's like, no,
the way a Paisa starts a sentence, no.
Yeah, with the yes, no, yes, yeah. I actually start doing that now, which is awful. Like, what are you thinking about? No. Well, no, that's not a response. That's not an accurate response to that question. But anyway, he's like, no, I was wanting to make my friends happy. And I was like, okay, all right. You were wanting to make your friends happy. I was like, but the purpose of the right now is kind of logging in and experience this and kind of getting, whatever, getting our learning on. And he's like, yeah, no, I was wanting to make my friends happy. And I was like, but what about like the learning, Because like we're setting ourselves up to be successful by learning the specific strategy that we're thinking about in math. And he's like, well, no, my friends are going to be there forever. And I was like, okay. I was like, so your friends are going to be there forever, but the learning is not. He's like, yeah, no, it's just my friends will be here forever. So I need to make sure they're happy. And so he saw a complete disconnect between what we were doing in school and like the learning of stuff and his friends. Mm-hmm. And that's one. And then another guy, he gets super nervous. He doesn't want to tell his friends that he wants to read better or that he wants to write better or that he is interested in what we're doing. He's like, can you just not sit me around them so I don't have to ask them to stop talking? So they'd rather fit in with the social stuff. And again, I'm using they, I'm just talking about a few kids, not all the kids.
Yeah.
They'd rather fit in with the social stuff than to be a quote unquote learner. And so so that's why I think there's a low level of trust when it comes to, do they trust each other when it comes to, whatever. And then, so my kind of thought is, what can I do in the classroom to make sure that we do have a culture of trust in which they can, want to learn, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. That sparks two things. Like I have another friend who's an international teacher. He was in Bogota for a while. He's in Costa Rica now, but he's a really smart dude. Beyond like the teaching thing, he's just an intellectual. But something that he kind of, I don't know if this is true, but it was something that he brought to my attention that it's something to consider. and this is not exactly what you were saying, but it sparked it in my mind that he thinks that in the U.S. there's an anti-intellectual culture where you're like shamed if you're smart. Like,
yeah.
And I've seen, like, you kind of see that's kind of it. I don't want to look like I'm trying, or I don't want to look like I'm. That seems odd, doesn't it? It seems like you'd want to be the smarter person. I wonder how.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, not to take you off task with the trust thing, because I do want to talk about that as well. But I'm curious as to why that manifests. Like, it seems like you would, in a competitive culture, because I would say Medellin is a competitive culture as well, wouldn't you? It seems like you would strive to be the smarter one. And I think obviously you can't throw everybody in a box, but there's also a significant portion of kids who are scared to stand out or to look like they're trying to improve or something like that.
Yeah, especially because you missed our new superintendent. She did this cool kind of presentation when it came to cultures and some of the research that has been done. And it was like this huge, I think it was done in the 80s or 70s cultural study. And, it was take it for what it's worth, take it for a grain of salt kind of thing. But she was comparing American culture to Colombian culture. And one of the things about Colombian culture is that they do not want to stand out. Like, they want to be part of the group, and they don't want anyone. There's no sense of stepping out and being noticed. Whereas in the United States, in general, like at least back then, we did want to stand out, and we did want to be separate. We do want to, be noticed and everything. But to go back to your point about like the intellectual stuff. That's even if you really want to look at teaching, like, we're such an egalitarian kind of where everyone is equal and everyone's the same and we're all good teachers and no one's different. And, there's almost some pressure there in you don't want to say, oh, well, I'm actually pretty good at this, like, have you ever said that to it? In like a meeting somewhere, you're like, hey, I'm feeling pretty good in the way I'm assessing right now. If anyone would like to come in and watch that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we don't do that.
Yeah.
And so it's such a strange thing that I mean, it's just totally bizarre.
Yeah. I've said that a couple of times on this podcast, and I've felt self-conscious about it afterwards. Like, I've said, yeah, I'm good at my job, and I feel, and I am confident. Like, I've said that, but I've thought after we've ended the conversation, I've been like, man, I don't know. You don't want to be arrogant either. You know what I mean? Like, you have
of course.
But I know what you mean. Something though, like I never had. Yeah, trust is so important to me. And as you asked me that question, I was like, man, I don't know that I have a protocol necessarily, but on some level, I do. From day one, that's probably the most important thing. But I could pick it apart, I suppose. But in the most simple terms, I just try to love them.
Yeah.
And I try to respect them. Like, I don't want to be I think that adolescents look for boundaries, and they do want to. Like, I didn't want to be an authority figure, and I try not to be. But sometimes their behavior is calling out for it. They're looking for those boundaries. You know what I mean? But I'm not sure where I was going with that. But the point is, like, I guess I was just saying that I try to treat them just like people.
Right. Yeah.
I just want to treat them like people. And I think that comes with being consistent too, and being fair and admitting when you make a mistake. Like, you can't be afraid to tell. To me, I don't know. I've seen teachers who, I don't know. To me, I perceive it as a type of insecurity, but they're afraid to tell their kids that they messed up.
Right.
Like, a kid came to me today and was like, well, you said this. And I was like, dude, I was wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was probably tired that day. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Yeah. And God forbid we apologize to them, right? And show them, hey, I apologize for the way I spoke to you then. I was thinking about something and,
Yeah.
Because I always find it interesting when you hear teachers go, oh, they should respect me because I'm a teacher, or, they should do this because of, who I am. And it's like, well, if you're not talking to them with respect and you're not showing them love and kindness, then why on earth would they ever do it to you? Like, you're the adult who's leading things and being the model. And so that's like, that really affects me, because I think sometimes I get, I don't want to say dismissive, but sometimes if I'm frustrated, I react in a certain way. And I think I pick up on my students doing that same thing, like that they will pick up on the way I'm behaving or acting, and then they'll mimic that.
Like,
so
do you have an example?
Like, for example, if a student is being particularly interruptive, is that not even a word? And I'm trying to get through the lesson, and I've asked them a few times, because I'm like, if you need to go and you need to sit in a desk because you're not interested in what's going on right now, you can. Like, you can go out in the hall. If you have to have a conversation, go out in the hallway. And then, because I record the lessons and they can watch them at home if they want to, and kind of do the work there too. But then they still won't. they won't do it. So that really bothers me on some level. So instead of just kind of trying to say, please, let's talk another time and kind of do the discipline there, I do get a little kind of, I don't know, snappy or whatever. And so I noticed that the kids will kind of say it in the same way. Instead of just saying, hey, this is important to me, could you please stop talking? They'll just be like, hey, enough, kind of, you know what I mean? Like, and that's probably something I vocalized before. So then I try to be cognizant of that and try to work on that, to be kind of the eternally happy, not in a fake way, but like just positive, and really trying to help out. Cause like the whole positive, like they're so used to, the behavior management where it's like, oh, go move your clip, or, now your name's on the board and you got to check next to it. And that stuff works, quote unquote, works in the moment. Like, you can get a kid to stop talking doing that. But I'm more interested in getting them to buy into stuff. And that is a longer process, especially if they haven't had that kind of coming up, if they've just been, was that the Skinner method, right? Just behavioral management. You do this, I'm going to do this to you.
Is that the Skinner method? What is it like? Like,
isn't that isn't that the conditional? Because that's all. If you do this, then this happens to you. The whole carrot stuff, sticks and carrots kind of thing. That is all external, and as we found out, doesn't really work in the long term for people. A bat just flew around, so that's what I was looking at. Where was I going with that? But but I think all that comes down to trust. So do they trust me to, help them out when they need help? And like you said, it's treating them with kindness and love, and I mean, because I just read yesterday where they were like that Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
So important to me.
But like, they think that the bottom now is actually love and kindness and human contact.
Wow.
Because if you look at a baby, if they don't get that contact, right, they're done. They're done.
They literally die, don't they?
Yeah, they die. And that's more important than the food aspect to being a human.
And I've wondered how they've done that research, on a side note, because I've heard that and I'm like, who did that? When
did that horrifying, have you heard about the orphanage in Eastern Europe? It was like in Romania or something. It was awful. It was just it was just these kids that had been abandoned and no one had held them. And it was really awful. So it was one of those Eastern Bloc communist kind of things that happened. Yeah.
Man, I think I'm like analyzing myself based on that question that you asked about building trust. And I mean, obviously it's not a quick thing, is it? Like, it's rapport, and you build it, and you treat them like you want to be treated.
Yeah.
But I start off the year, I think this is important because, I've mentioned to you before, like, to me, it's so important to be clear about what my philosophy of education is, because it's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I could be teaching English or history or psychology or whatever, and it would still be the same goal. And it's based on Maslow's hierarchy. And I actually show that to them, and I break it down, and I try to explain to them that I'm trying to aid them in their journey, because, the theory says that it's a need. You're driven to do this on a subconscious, intrinsic way, that you want to become the best version of yourself. But what's always stood out to me, and this is what I tell them, and I actually just revisited it with them today and yesterday for reasons I could explain later, but they say that, or at least Maslow said that most people will never get past self-esteem. They'll spend their whole life there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that starts in school, and it starts with, again, I want to be careful. Like, I also am conscious of the fact it sounds like I'm a teacher basher, but I mean, not all people are healthy, and that includes adults.
Right. Yeah.
and we interact with kids on a daily basis, and then you pass on that if you want to call it like a mental sickness, if you will, you pass that on. It's contagious,
Yeah.
But I start off the year showing them that my goal for you is to help you become the best version of yourself, and that's why I'm doing this. And then I try to show them that over and over through my actions, and in my mind, I have to be conscious that that's what I'm doing. I'm not trying to make them history scholars. I want to use history in a positive way, but my actual goal is, and to harp back on the self-esteem thing, because we do have such incredible power as role models to them. You have to be so careful. And that's why, like you said, you got to say, I'm sorry sometimes.
Right.
You know, you got to. Otherwise, you're setting them up. Like, for some reason in our school, I wasn't even aware of this. We had like a student committee come talk to us. But apparently the kids are, in middle school at least, they're comparing their grades, and it's happening in a really malicious way. And I don't really understand the ins and outs of it. But, for that reason, I was revisiting. I showed them this other theory that I showed them as well, called attribute or goal orientation theory. And it shows like people who are mastery oriented. You and I talked about that. Like it's essentially a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, but you know, there's other implications within that. And it's interesting because people who are performance oriented, they compare themselves to other people.
Yeah.
And the mastery person compares themselves to their own last performance. They're not concerned with what you're doing. So I was showing that to them, and I was like, the reason, and then I was showing them the Maslow thing again, and I was like, the reason y'all are doing this, a reason, not necessarily the reason, but one of the big reasons is because you do lack self-esteem, and that's okay because you're an adolescent and you're right around level 3 and 4 where you're looking for belonging and you're trying to build your self-esteem, and that is right. You should be doing that, but there's a positive way to do that. There's a negative way to do that, and you should be building your self-esteem by seeing your own personal improvement, not by trying to compare yourself to the whole group, you know. And I'm just going with you because I've been wanting to speak about this with somebody. Like, I think that's why so many adults never get out of it. Because, I mean, how is that any different than me trying to buy the nicest car to outdo the guy beside me or whatever? You just never get past that phase. You're constantly looking for approval and self-esteem on some level.
Well, yeah, and I mean, isn't that the inherent kind of? I wouldn't want to put all the blame on that, but I mean that is grades, right? Like when we quantify something with a letter or a number, you know, then we make it to where you can compare it, right? And it doesn't mean anything. Like an 89 has no real meaning, or a 3, you know, or even when we do standards-based stuff. But how do you develop? How do you get kids to buy in? How do you get everyone to buy into that growth mindset and the idea to be internal and kind of and when you do all of that stuff when our society in general is such look at this, get the new stuff. It's so consumer driven.
Totally.
It's so consumption driven. And then you look online, and then social media is all about putting your best foot forward and all the pictures. And now kids are comparing themselves to that. And they're like, well, I'm not doing anything on Friday night. I suck. And look at all the fun my friends are having. What's wrong with me kind of thing. So, I mean, now it's even more and more. And that's totally fake. Because you know, those kids are struggling just like you are. They're just not showing pictures about it. Or maybe they are now, and it's even worse than I think. I don't know.
You never see on my Facebook feed me crying and being like, "I'm so bad today," you know.
But then they do that whole pray, think for me, and they won't say what it is, and then they make you ask it, and then they talk about it, which is a horrible practice.
Oh man.
But then I was actually thinking, to tie back to what you were talking about earlier, the kids that were focused on things that were outside of their control. I mean, that shows a fixed mindset, right? Like there's this stuff that I can't do anything about that's affecting me. Whereas what can I do internally to kind of make my life better and to understand what I have control over.
Yeah, and I don't guess I hate it, but I guess I'm saying I feel it's odd that when I talk to you, we just kind of vibe, and everything tends to, for some reason to me, connect in my schema to this idea of ed psych, but it just happens to, you know. Yeah. But there's this other thing that I learned. I guess these things, and this is what I tell the kids today, like when I was talking to them, I was like, this was so enlightening for me. I didn't learn this till I got to college, and it changed my life. It empowered me in ways that I wish I would have had access to earlier. And like we said, I got lucky that I had these classes. but the other theory is called attribution theory, and that's essentially what it says. It says people who take responsibility for their failures, which your ego doesn't want you to do that, but you actually empower yourself, because when it's the teacher's fault, I can't change the teacher.
Right.
Or when my car broke down and that's why I didn't get there, even though, I don't know, that might be a legit thing. But the point is, you're always putting the blame somewhere instead of just saying, yeah, you know what, I should have studied and I didn't, but I can fix that. That's the thing. That's the empowering part of it. You have this impulse of ego to not be wrong and not want to own the mistake because you want to, but you're disempowering yourself in doing that, because you can't change somebody else. You can't change the outside thing. And that's why I was so alarmed when they were talking about all the things that stressed them out. It was all stuff that they could not personally control,
Right.
Only one student, again, it's interesting. This girl must be, I would say she probably has a really high emotional intelligence. And I don't know if it's something that's cultivated at home or if it's just innate, but she said, today will be a good day if I can master my dance routine. And I'm like, yeah, that's up to you. You can do that. And she was the only one the week before who gave a positive response to the I wishes, because a girl said, I want to be able to sing and dance like this person. And she said, you can. And I said, so after they had acknowledged that they were all negative, I was like, so why did you do that? She's like, because she's good. I've heard her dance and sing. She's good. How beautiful is that?
Yeah, it is. And then you wonder, like you said, is it is something happening at home, that is allowing that? Is it even on purpose? But I think that's so cool that we are at a time now where, obviously we've always been able to do things on purpose, but we have access to the knowledge on how to do it. So like if any teacher would want to do something on purpose to develop the emotional, intelligence of their kids, they can, there's access to that. And that's something that you can do. So it'd be interesting to see if what is different about her life, that gives her a different outlook than most of the kids there.
I just, I know personally, and I told this to the kids too, because I didn't want them to feel, because it was an attack on them in a positive way, in the sense that I told them, if you are one of those people who is obsessed with comparing your grades to other people and you're kind of doing it in this malicious way, it's because you do have low self-esteem. Because they want that behavior to change. So I was kind of putting a little emphasis on that. But also, again, I followed that up with, but it's normal. You should be searching for self-esteem. That's exactly where you are in life.
Yeah.
You just got to do it in this positive way. But with that being said, man, I was so, my whole life, I don't know, that might be an exaggeration, but I would have to say that my society and even the people that love me, because they were programmed this way, I was programmed to be performance oriented.
Yeah.
Like my dad would always say, man, that boy's just got it. He's just a good athlete, and that's true. But most of us are, except for like the 10% at this end and that end, there's most of us are somewhere in the middle. And depending on the qualities that you choose to have, right? Like the behaviors, that's going to be if you look at like a Michael Jordan, right?
Yeah.
Now, granted, he's an exceptional athlete, isn't he? But if you put him on scale of athleticism within the NBA, he was, there's nothing exceptional on that level, but all these other qualities that he had were what kind of propelled him beyond the average NBA player. It wasn't like he was, but I was just I know where they are, man, because I was so insecure growing up, all the way into my early 20s. I was just so concerned with what other people thought about me, and actually didn't really, you kind of bury it. This was my experience, so I'm assuming other people do it, but you kind of try to hide you lie to your own self, and you try to hide your own low self-esteem again. And so I think that's how you kind of get trapped in that, like you were talking about, consumer cycle of, you always try to fill that hole with the new shoes or the car or whatever, the material things. And most philosophers and religious people for 1,000 years have been saying that's not it.
Take the ticket, guys.
That's not the way it's gonna happen. That's not how you're gonna get what you think it is that you, which I guess, if you listen to Maslow, what we're trying to get is that self-actualization. But because we're stuck on that lower level, we're constantly using these temporary things to try to boost it,
Yeah. And it's just, that's the question, is just how do you fight through that for the students, Because like it's
Well,
one thing for my kids. I mean, I can do that with my kids, and even that's going to be a
mhm.
struggle, you know. But at least I can control stuff in some sense at home. But
Mhm.
how do you do that for students who are, you know, you have to understand the only thing you can control is within that classroom, and even
Yeah.
then you can't control everything because you don't know. You know, what I mean, I'd be foolhardy to think that I'm controlling everything within that ecosystem of my classroom.
Mhm.
But I can control some of the stuff, and I can give them experiences and try and, you know, elevate their thinking in that sense. But other than that, like, you know, the rest of the time that they're surrounded by kids, they're surrounded by the expectations of other people and society at large. So
Mhm.
I guess it's just little by little or something. I don't know.
Well, yeah, because I mean, a kid asked me today. It was like, well, how do I? Because I said, emotional intelligence is, who was it? Gardner that did the multiple intelligences,
I think so.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and but anyway, whatever. The emotional intelligence is supposed to be really important, right? Like maybe
Mhm.
it's a more determining factor in where you end up in life
Yeah.
than your IQ.
Yeah.
Um, and I think one of the interesting things that, at least in this book that I'm reading, what they keep harping back to is that it's about how you define success. And these people who are emotionally intelligent, they know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and they seek out opportunities and environments that are conducive to that.
Mhm.
Um, so when the kid asked me that, initially I didn't know, and then you're kind of asking the same thing, like how do you do it? I would say I don't know, but two things came to mind. The first one is just showing it, because
Mhm.
someone showed it to me and it woke me up, and I was like, man, I'm that dude. I'm that performance dude. I've been doing that.
Yeah.
And it's just a choice. And I don't know if
Yeah.
this is true. Do you know about this theory? Have you seen the goal orientation theory?
I haven't, but I think, I mean, I haven't purposely looked at it, but I have heard
Okay.
some things about it. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you'll get what I'm saying when I say this, but it just kind of had a light bulb go off, and I said it to the kids. But I was like, it's almost like the performance oriented person believes in destiny. They
Mm-hmm.
have no control.
Right.
And the mastery person believes in free will as choice.
Uh-huh.
So I'm, part of cultivating that, I think, is just showing this. Because like when I showed it to the kids, it wasn't part of my curriculum. It was a
Mm-hmm.
sidestep of what we're actually doing in class. I was like, let's talk about this today, and we'll get back to what we were doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and so we did this stuff, and it was in like a graphic organizer. I was like, all right, if y'all want it, you can take a picture of it. And every class, there were kids, everybody's not going to get it. It's not going to go off for everybody. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
But there was a significant number of people who were interested enough in it that they took photographs and they wanted to ask me more questions about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
one way, is just to make it known, because I don't know, it seems so obvious when it's just shown to you, but it's just hard to see it, isn't it?
And that was one of the things I read is the guy, if you have a belief and you know something, and then the other person doesn't, you think all that you need to do. And usually he was talking about adults, like,
Mm-hmm.
and then you give them the book, that has the information in it, and then they read it, and then they still don't agree with you. Then you're just like, that person's a moron. but it's just not the case. It's just sometimes, they said one of the things that you can try and do is, especially if you're in a discussion with someone who doesn't believe the same thing that you believe, or I mean, even if you break it down to like a policy at school, like if you can get someone to explain how something works, then they're more, and they verbalize like how their thought process works, or how that policy is going to work, or whatever, all the way to success, and they understand the effects of everything. You do two things. One, you can learn something as the person listening, right? You're like, oh, okay, so this is how it works. I understand now. And two, you if they go through that process of thinking about it, then they're open to the idea of, oh, well, maybe I haven't thought about this, or maybe, I had this belief that was based upon almost nothing, and now that I'm talking about it, I see that there's some holes in my logic and everything like that. And then they're more willing to listen then, to a different point of view. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and that just for whatever reason, if maybe kids, I mean, like, because you kind of talk about the philosophy of life and philosophy of education, like, how do they think work? How do they think things work? That would be, I wonder if that would do anything for kids. Like if they actually got to verbalize, how does their life work, or how does life work? That might give them a chance to kind of be open to hearing other things. I don't know.
And have I talked to you about that Wim Hof guy, the Iceman?
No.
No. Anyway, He's interesting too. You should Google him later. I've been doing some of his stuff, but he's just he's kind of a mad. He's kind of like divine. He's a guy who's divinely mad. If I'll say, I've seen that. In other words, he's kind of enlightened. I'm saying he's kind of a nut, but he's anyway. He's got this thing called the Wim Hof method that's being like backed up by science. It's kind of like, I don't know. This is going to be such a trying to bring this in so you can get what I'm saying when I say it, but this is not the point. But he's essentially created a meditative process that's supposed to be really beneficial. Okay. If I could just put it in simple terms, and he's like the first guy to actually have it under scientific scrutiny, and it seems to be backing up a lot of the stuff that he proclaims. But I've been watching videos by him, and the thing that he always says, and you'll understand this, is everybody will. Feeling is understanding. I'm trying to tell like words are good, but they fall short of explaining something like love or any abstract noun. You know what I'm saying? But feeling is understanding, and feeling. And so that's the other thing about when you say, like, how do you cultivate it? I'm not exactly sure, but I do think if you share it with people and they see the benefit of it and they feel it for a minute, then it becomes contagious. I think once you feel it, it gives you a realization or understanding that's deeper than just the cold, hey, here's this thing, right? Like it's, and I guess it's kind of like what you're saying, like when you go through that process, I guess it makes you internalize it maybe.
Yeah. I guess, maybe you attach some, that internal feeling to it. That's really interesting. Because now it's almost like now is it our, I guess it's our, how do you make reading feel, right? Or writing? Like there's obviously feelings to that, right? I mean, obviously when you read, you feel stuff. When you write, you're kind of exposing your own feelings. Yeah, I think there's something probably enormous there that we need to be a little more purposeful in talking about or trying to link to.
Are you not kind of doing that? You were explaining to me that you're doing a thing in your class where the kids are kind of like directing one of their classes, right?
Yeah, I'm trying. I need to kind of iron it out a little bit, but yeah, we do. Actually, I give them a whole day.
Are they doing that? Are they kind of explaining, like when you're talking about explaining how something works? Are they kind of going through that process with what you're trying?
Some of them are, and some of them right now are playing video games the whole day, what's really interesting, and we can talk about this more in depth another time. But what's super interesting is this kid was like. My daughter's awake, so I'm gonna have to go here soon. Okay. Because I'm by myself. Diana's in Cali at a conference. But there she is. You can say hi real quick.
Good morning.
I'll have to go back to bed because it's super early for you, Sweet Pea. But he said,
goodness.
He said, she is. He said, oh, but you don't learn anything through playing. And I was like, huh. Okay. Yeah, I was like, that's all we learn from is playing. But I didn't respond that way.
Who said that? The kid?
One of my students. Yeah. He's like, what do you mean play? You don't learn anything through play.
Wow.
That was his exact quote. So on that
that's why it's so good, because you tricked them.
Exactly. on that mark, well, maybe we can talk about that more next time.
Let's
but I have to go take care of this. But hey, I want